Kyle Bascom here, our Mercedes catalog manager, and today we're going to talk about the Mercedes W204. I'm going to cover all of the essentials on the platform, from aesthetics down to mechanical issues. So if you're looking to purchase one, or you're simply unsure of what W204 means or looks like, I'm going to go over everything you need to know in this video. As we all know, Mercedes is luxury. They're so classy that their model variances are called classes. Mercedes 204 is actually all of the C-Class models from 2008 up to about 2014, depending on the body style. We're mainly going to talk about the pre-facelift models that were offered 2008 to 2011, just to keep things digestible. The later models that start in 2012 we'll cover in a different video. So, Mercedes sold approximately 250,000 of these sedans between 2008 and 2011, and the used market's saturated with examples to choose from. 204 competes with the E90 BMW, P3S60 Volvo, your V8 Audi A4s. For the models we're discussing today, the C-Class was only available as a sedan, and that's actually what the W in W204 stands for. Now behind me, I have a C300 all-wheel drive sport model. I have a C300 rear-wheel drive manual transmission car, which we endurance race. And lastly, I have a C300 luxury 4MATIC model. We don't have a C63 AMG, we don't have a C350 as well today, but we will cover both models in our buyer's guide. All three models behind us feature the M272 V6 engine. It's a very reliable engine, has an adequate, at best, 228 horsepower. If you ordered a C350, you would have gotten a half-liter bump-in displacement to 3.5-liter V6 engine, offering 268 horsepower. Then lastly, you have your C63, which is a beast of an engine. 6.2-liter AMG hand-built engine with 451 horsepower. Mercedes does make it fairly simple to decipher which of their two main trim levels the car may be. Luxury and sport model W204s can be easily distinguished by their front grille and hood emblem. Luxury models have an emblemless grille and an upright hood star. Sport model grilles have two slats with a prominent Mercedes star emblem. The hood emblem is flush mounted. A more aggressive side sill and front apron with a chin spoiler were offered on sport models. They have a slightly stiffer ride as well, and they sit about a half an inch lower than their luxury counterpart. The interiors don't differ too much across the different model variants. What you'll notice with the luxury models is they have a 4-spoke steering wheel, while the sport models have a 3-spoke. Additionally, you'll notice the front brakes are perforated. They're cross-drilled on sport models, while the luxury models have a solid face. So now that we've touched on the various model variants for the W204, we're going to hop into one of them and go for a test drive, and I'm going to show you exactly what to look for if you're looking to purchase one of these models. All right, so first thing you want to do, take the key, put in the ignition, listen. What you're listening for is the click of the steering lock unlocking. Do it a couple of times. Hear that? That audible noise? These cars have a very common issue where the column will not unlock and then you're stranded. You're literally stranded. So if you're thinking about buying one of these vehicles, make sure this works. While the car is idling, if the car is cold, you can normally hear just audibly but faint. You'll hear the secondary air injection pump blowing. What you want to feel for is excess harshness. Could be an indication that your engine mounts or transmission mounts are failing. So what you want to look for on the tach is it just stays dead where it is. So if it's steady, but you feel any vibration or harshness, could be an indication that either the engine mounts, the transmission mount, or both are shot. Let's go for a drive. So while you're driving, you really shouldn't feel the transmission shifting. The shifts should be, for the most part, imperceptible. This car's got a 7-speed automatic transmission, as all 4MATIC models do. It's a very smooth shifting car. So as you pull off from a stoplight, do so fairly aggressively, and what you're listening for are your control arm bushings. When they're gone, you'll either feel it or hear it. When you hear it, it'll be a clunk when the bracket of the bushing hits the subframe. We're gonna get on the highway right now. Very bumpy stretch. You just want to kind of feel what the suspension is doing. Does the ride feel controlled, or is it like super choppy? As you get into the higher highway speeds, you don't want to feel any vibrations in your fingertips. The car should just go dead straight. And this one's doing so. And then just a quick stab on the brakes. No shaking in the wheel at all. That's what you want to feel. That's what you want to see. Next thing you want to look out for, instrument cluster. All your dials need to be working all of the time. In this case, tach's working, speedo's working, temperature's working. What you want to look out for with temperature is it's going to sit around 95 degrees Celsius. So your needle for temperature is going to sit a little bit above center. That's perfectly normal for this car. Most people kind of get freaked out by it. They think the car's overheating. It's not. It's got a 100-degree thermostat, so that's just about right. Also, watch out for Honda Civics trying to come in your lane. That was cute. Some of the amenities of the vehicle, you've got this screen with the audio system, so if you hit on for the audio, that pops up, that opens up for you. Let's shut that off so we can record. You've got the rear window shade, so you want to hit it, make sure the shade goes up and down. This car's not doing it, so that's a feature that's not working. We've got heated seats. You've got Bluetooth for telephone only, no audio, unfortunately. You've got, we'll call it dynamic cruise control that sits on the stalk over here, super easy to use. Tilt and telescoping for the steering wheel. It's very common for the tilt or telescoping motors to lock up. On this one, if you go down with it, you can hear the motor click. If you go up with it, you don't. So if you don't hear that clicking, that motor's dead. If you do hear the clicking, but the steering wheel doesn't go up or down, typically just wrestling with it frees it. So if you're pushing the button up and you're pulling down, that tends to just like unlock it. That's a trick I'll typically use. But yeah, steering wheel goes up and down, tilts and telescopes, as you can see. So now we're gonna head back to the shop and get into all of the really technical details of these cars. So we're back in the shop. We're gonna pop open the hood. We're gonna take a tire off, get under the vehicle, and show you everything you need to look out for. So all of your W204 variants outside of your AMG model is going to have a version of the 272 engine. Let's get started by pulling off the cosmetic covers on the engine and the airbox. These are just retained by clips. Take it off, clip back here, pull this guy, pull this guy. Oh, hopefully the car doesn't fight you as much as it just fought me. Now we can really take a look at things. On these engines, you're only going to have 3 common areas for oil leaks. At the back of the cylinder head, just run your hand like this. You take your hand up and you've got oil, you've got a problem. In this case, it's nice and dry. And you can look at it visually. If you see a lot of dust or oil back here, you know you've got an oil leak. Over here at your oil cooler, you can do the same thing, just run your hand there. If it comes up dry, you're good. If not, you've got an oil leak at the oil cooler. And then lastly, these cam magnets, which are fairly problematic on these models, can leak electrically through the harness connector, or there's a little O-ring between it and the cylinder head that can leak as well. So that's it for the most part in terms of oil leaks. You're not dealing with valve cover gaskets. You're really not dealing with rear main seal nonsense. For the most part, that's it. Next thing you want to look at is your serpentine belt drive, which is right here. Everything's pretty visible. You're just looking for fraying, cracking. When the pulley system starts to go, the very first rib on the belt, you'll see a lot of fraying and like nylon and such. So you want to look out for that. If you get an opportunity to have the engine on while you're under the hood, you're just going to listen for a squeak coming from the idlers. Those are all very common issues on the motor. So what do I like the most about this motor, this engine family? Everything is super accessible. You have a lot of room to work in the engine bay. It's a very simple motor to work on. It's not like an Audi where you might have to pull off a front clip, or a BMW where the cowl needs to come off. Your coils and your plugs are right here, super accessible. Your belt drive's right here, your thermostat's right here. Very easy motor to work on. So, very common issue with wheels on this vehicle. They crack, they bend super easy, but most commonly they crack. So just look along the circumference for any cracks or any evidence of a crack being welded up. If you get an opportunity to take the wheel off the vehicle, also just roll it and you can see if it's wavy or wobbly or anything like that. In this case, this one is relatively straight. So you'll remember in the ride-along video that we did, I mentioned the front bumpers on the sport models getting damaged quite easily. But you'll notice on this one, the lower air dams, they sit super low and you'll always see this kind of damage. This one's pretty bad, but you'll typically see damage in this area. Moving along into the brake system, sport model vehicles, they're gonna have this Mercedes-Benz placard on the caliper and they will have cross-drilled rotors. So in the cross-drilling feature, sometimes you'll see a lot of brake dust. That's totally normal. Mild grooving is totally normal, but any very heavy grooving or a lip on the edge of the rotor is going to cause noise and maybe even vibration. So just keep that in mind when you're inspecting the brake system on these vehicles. All right, so all of these vehicles have a McPherson strut setup and then you have your two lower links. Your most common failure point in your suspension is going to be the bushing in this link. You are looking for cracking and fraying of the bushing. You're looking for a lot of free movement. In this case, this one's still pretty tight. If it's a hydro-filled bushing, which is the most common, you're looking for witness marks of like a brown stain in this area. That would be evidence of the bushing having popped and it's just draining down the arm. Additionally, you have your sway bar end link over here. Very common source of noise, this sway bar end link. Coincidentally, with this vehicle, the sway bar actually snapped. So if you take a look at the other side, there currently is no sway bar end link. The sway bar ends here because it snapped and it fell on the axle, so you can see the witness marks of it riding the axle. While you're under the car and in this area, in addition to looking for leaks from the bushing and leaks under this area, you can see it's all pretty dry. This is going to be your front differential. This mild weeping is pretty common, nothing to worry about there, but anything more than this, an axle seal would need to be replaced to resolve that problem. Your front drive shaft is going to be over here. A little play at the U-joint is fine. Anything where you're hearing heavy clunking noises when you're moving this guy up and down is not okay. Also, sometimes at the U-joint, don't know if you guys can see it unfortunately, but there is a U-joint in the forward section of the front drive shaft where it goes to the differential. If you're noticing a lot of brown or red dust, U-joint's probably about to fail. Then lastly, when we get to the tail of the transmission, this is where your, we'll call it transfer case for lack of a better word, is going to be. We've got a little bit of weeping here. That's normal. Anything more than this would be cause for concern. And the reasoning behind that is your transmission fluid and your transfer case share common fluid. So if it's leaking, your transmission fluid level is going to be low, and you're going to end up with shifting issues, running issues, things of that nature. You may also wear out the transfer case as a result of a low fluid level. So we have a 5-link setup similar to the previous generation, what I alluded to when we did the ride along. The primary difference being we no longer have stamped steel control arms. Additionally, you have your rear differential back here. You're going to want to check for fluid leaks where the axles go into the differential, as well as at the drain fill plug area over here. And lastly, you want to check your flex disc for excess cracking, because that can lead to driveline clunks, vibration, things of that nature. All right, so now we're going to go back into the interior of the vehicle and touch on some things that we didn't get an opportunity to do when we did the ride along. So first thing I want to show you is a huge common issue on these vehicles. These door handles, they almost always fail. You'll see they just flop around, they don't really work the way they're supposed to. Fortunately, in the aftermarket and on our website, we do offer a repair kit for this guy. But long story short, the handle's not available separately. If you need to replace your handle, from the dealer perspective, you need to replace your door panel. the driver's seat of most W204 models that are equipped with the MB-Tex, so not the real leather, but they're synthetic fabric, you're going to notice all of them are split at the seat bottom. Super common failure as well. Seat bottoms are available in every color trim from the dealer, but just keep in mind, anything over about 60,000 miles, MB-Tex seat bottom is going to have a split in it. And then lastly, in the center console, you've got a scroll wheel for your Mercedes command system, which is essentially your entertainment system and some vehicle features. That scroll wheel, unfortunately, that fails as well. So you'll try to spin and select something and it's just not going to happen. On this chassis, outside of the 3 or 4 issues that we've pointed out already, you're really not going to have many issues with the interior of this vehicle. So we just finished talking about the 272, and as you remember from much earlier, we weren't fortunate enough to have a C63 AMG available. Fortunately, we do have a portion of its engine here today. The C63 AMGs were equipped with the M156 family of engines. It's a 6.2 liter V8. I'm not actually as small as I look here. This engine's just really big. A lot of the common issues on the 6.2 you're not going to be able to diagnose very quickly in like a walk around or visually, but you will be able to hear and listen out for certain things if you're looking to purchase the vehicle. So opening up the valve cover on this guy, what you'll notice is a lot of the valve train has been removed. However, I still want to talk about some of the common issues. The first is going to be your camshaft adjuster. If you start this vehicle cold and you hear a rattling noise on startup, it is very likely this guy right here that's the source of your problem. Additionally, in the valve train, you've got a camshaft that rides against hydraulic lifters. I'll just pop one out here. Here we are. There were issues with the camshaft lobes eroding or wearing through the lifters. In this case, what you can see is the lobes of this camshaft look fairly decent, and this hydraulic lifter looks fine, but in a lot of cases, the camshaft would wear through the hydraulic lifters, requiring replacement of both the cams as well as all hydraulic lifters. Lastly, what I want to show you is the inside of the intake manifold on these vehicles. So inside of the intake manifold is this magnesium enclosure for your throttle bodies. You can see here the 2 throttle bodies. Where the wiring harness routes through this plate, what you can see is this area corrodes away. And what happens as a result of this corrosion is air is getting into an area of the intake manifold it shouldn't be. You might end up with rough running, lean codes, and things of that nature. So you do want to look out for rough idling or rough running vehicle. It could indicate that the plate inside the manifold needs to be replaced. There are solutions available in the aftermarket, or you can go the factory route of replacing the entire intake manifold. So now that we've talked about the AMG engine, just wanted to take a moment to dive into the suspension and brakes on these vehicles. What we have here, obviously, is our C300 Endurance Racer. But believe it or not, we swapped over all of the C63 AMG components for the suspension and the brakes. So let's take a look. To start, on the C63, you had this compound 2-piece brake rotor. This was primarily offered on the performance package models. So that package code is typically P30 or P31, depending on who you talk to. So it's your frictions floating, and then you have an aluminum hat section. If you didn't have performance package, you had the same rotor dimensionally, but it was 1 piece instead of 2. You have a large 6-piston brake caliper. This is a Brembo brake system, and it was 360 millimeters. So really large brake system, very fade resistant. That's what you would find on all of your AMGs. Additionally, we're running Sachs suspension on our C300 race car. If you want to learn more about the Sachs kit, we've actually done a really quick product review on this product, as well as many others for the W204 chassis. So we definitely recommend that you take a look, and we'll leave it in the link below. So on all rear-wheel drive models, you have the same basic suspension arrangement, very similar to what we discussed on the 4MATIC cars. You have this tension strut, unfortunately blocked by a huge brake duct that's necessary for racing. But you have a tension strut here, This one has that large bushing that I talked about before, that sometimes the hydraulic will leak fluid, or you'll get creaking when it hits the subframe like we talked about in the ride-along. And then you have this other control arm back here. I don't know if you guys can see it too well. That is specific to the C300 models. I believe you get a little more camber and caster from this arm compared to your regular rear-wheel drive arm. On our race car, we've upgraded to Synchro Design Works monoball setup for this tension strut. That product can be used on all rear-wheel drive W204 models. Out of all of the variants that we've talked about today, this is the only manual transmission one. Manual transmission cars were only offered as rear-wheel drive models, and they were only offered from 2008 until 2010. Additionally, C350 models, which were only offered with an automatic transmission, were only available as sport models. You couldn't get a C350 luxury. And then lastly, the C300, you can get rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, automatic. Why do I keep calling the W204 reliable, despite the fact that we've pointed out a myriad of different issues on these vehicles? As you can see, we've raced this C300 for over 1,000 hours, and we really haven't had any major issues with the platform. So if you're interested in the car, we definitely recommend picking one up. There are a lot of different variants to choose from, but at the end of the day, they're all very similar. So now that we've gone through all of the different models, and brakes, suspension, and drivetrains, and interiors, and common issues on these vehicles, we hope you found this information very helpful, especially if you're considering buying one of these models. If you have any questions at all, be sure to leave it in the comments below. If you like what you've seen today, hit the like button, subscribe, buy our merchandise. Thanks for watching.